think it's just past 11:15, so we will get started on this webinar. Thank you so much for joining us for Multicultural Health Week 2025 and this webinar on healthy ageing. My name is Dr. Marianne Gale, and I'm a public health physician and the Director of Population and Community Health in Southeastern Sydney Local Health District, and I'm your MC for today. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're all meeting today, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and I extend that respect to Aboriginal people joining us today. I myself am joining you from beautiful Gadigal land, and welcome and to all Aboriginal colleagues on the line. I'd also like to acknowledge on the line today people of migrant and refugee backgrounds who have come from all around the world to make Australia their home and to contribute to the wonderful, rich and multicultural society that we enjoy. This forum is presented to you by the New South Wales Multicultural Health Communication Service, together with Southeastern Sydney Local Health District. This week is Multicultural Health Week, with the theme of healthy ageing. Older people are the heart of our family and community. This theme is all about celebrating older people in our lives. And I'd like to maybe pause for a moment and invite all of you on the line to think about an older person in your life, somebody dear to you, and have that person in mind as we talk about this subject today of healthy ageing. For me, that person is my own mum. She's of South Indian background, grew up in Malaysia and migrated to Australia in the early 80s. She's now 83 years old. She lives with dementia, but we still enjoy some beautiful times together and she enjoys life. So I invite you all to think about an older person in your life today and think about some of the things that you might take away from today's discussion to support and enhance their life. New South Wales Multicultural Health Communication Service has proudly coordinated Multicultural Health Week for 16 years, and they are generously supported by the Health and Social Policy Branch, the Centre for Population Health, Strategic Communication and Health Branch of the Ministry, Cancer Institute New South Wales, the Prevention, Education and Research Unit, and Western Sydney Local Health District. So as I mentioned just now, the theme for this year is healthy ageing. Older people are at the heart of our family and community. I think as all of us on the line well know, we are an ageing population. And I think it's a great privilege to live to see our older years. And I think, many of us will know of and have perhaps loved ones who are not fortunate to live long enough to enjoy the fruits of older years. But what we do want as well as we grow older is to spend as many of those years as we age in the best health that we possibly can. And that's what today's webinar is really about. We recognise that particularly in multicultural communities, there can be a higher prevalence of some chronic health conditions and some cancers. In my own family of a South Indian background, those issues we live with are diabetes risk and cardiovascular disease, and that's something that in my family we grapple with. So this year, we really want to focus on helping older people stay active, healthy and socially connected. And so the key things that you can see up on the screen there that we want to talk about are physical activity, falls prevention, eating a healthy diet, social connection, and cancer screening, very important subjects. And what better way to showcase these important messages than to have community champions share their personal stories about healthy ageing. This Multicultural Health Week, we have community ambassadors from Arabic, Chinese, Greek, and Italian-speaking communities. And they are Dimitra Mikos, Amir Salem, Janie Tham, and Maria Pirello. And they are role models for healthy aging. They are active, engaged, and committed to health screening and checkups. And I had the pleasure of meeting them earlier this week and can attest to the fact that they are as inspiring in person as they appear on screen. And we're now going to see them in action in a video. So I'm going to hand over to my colleagues to play us a video featuring our community ambassadors.
Health is a treasure.
We have to age healthily.
You have to keep active.
Να είσαι πολύ απεισχολημένος. Και αυτό νομίζω είναι η καλύτερη τροφή.
My name is Janie Tam. I'm over 60s of my age, yeah. I'm the mother of 3 children. 2AC Radio is a Chinese radio station. And I'm being, as my position, I'm very active with the community. So I don't really have time to think about my age, you know.
My name is Dimitrovakos. I'm 76 years old. Το Ελληνικό Κέντρο Προνοίας είναι ένας οργανισμός ο οποίος είναι 50 χρόνια φέτος και προσφέρει ένα μεγάλο έργο στην παροικία και είμαι πολύ τυχερή που βρίσκομαι στο Ελληνικό Κέντρο Προνοίας για πάρα πολλά χρόνια. Όταν ήμουν σε μια πιο νεαρά ηλικία, 32 ετών, έχασα το σύζυγο και έμεινα με 4 παιδιά. Τα 4 παιδιά ήταν πάρα πολύ μικρά και ασχολήθηκα πάρα πολύ και με το community και στο συνάνθρωπο. Το έργο αυτό μου έκανε πολύ μεγάλη, μου έδωσε μεγάλη δύναμη να συνεχίσω και να υπηρετώ μέχρι σήμερα.
I'm Maria Pirello and I'm 77 years old. I was born in Cerami, Provincia di Enna, in Sicilia. I came to Australia in 1953. I have 2 grandchildren. One's 5 and the other one is a 3-year-old. And so one day a week, they stay with us, they have something to eat. They really like that. At my age, I'm becoming very much aware of my health because there's still things I would like to do. In terms of healthy eating, you have to be consistent, and sometimes you get very busy and you'll feed the children but you won't feed yourself. So I think that if you don't eat well, you're missing out on the things that keeps us going.
My name is Amir Salem and my age is 82 years old. I have 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys. I have a very good partner, my wife, and I was active long time, all my life. When I was young, I was a basketball player. I'm trying to keep myself fit, but at one stage I fall down and it was really a big hit. I went to the hospital, they checked me and they recommended to be a gym. After a couple of weeks, I feel my muscles strong for that.
Health is very important in our life. I didn't really think it's so important unless one day I fell down on the street and I realized, oh, something get wrong. That's why I do go to the GP every once in a year at least. Even though you are healthy, but you don't know the development of your health, so regular checkup is very important because it can stop the things getting worse. Prevention is always good than cure. So if you really have something get wrong, then you can fix it as soon as you can and can have a good life. Yeah. My
daughters also say, Dad, we want to keep you to see your granddaughter getting married. So for that, they say, all right, I'll do my best.
I look forward to seeing the grandchildren grow. They're wonderful to be around. Yeah, that's what I look forward to.
Σε πιο προχωρημένη ηλικία και από τη δική μου, κοιτάζω να είμαι πάρα πολύ απεισχολημένη και αυτό βοηθάει πάρα πολύ. Για μένα είναι αυτό που με κρατάει πολύ δυνατή. Είναι πολύ σημαντικό. Κάτι χάπια στο σπίτι. Η αγάπη και οι δραστηριότητες. Και αυτό είναι που μου δίνει μεγάλο κουράγιο να αισθάνομαι πολύ δυνατή.
I think it's lovely to see such wonderful older people as role models for all of us as we get older and to keep active and engaged. So a big congratulations and acknowledgement to those wonderful community ambassadors. The video that you just saw is available in English and subtitled in Arabic, simplified and traditional Chinese, Greek, Italian, and Vietnamese. Each ambassador also has a 1-minute video in their own community language. These resources are being shared across social media platforms, New South Wales health channels, local health districts, and multicultural media. All resources are online with QR codes linking to multilingual fact sheets. So lots of resources out there, lots of opportunities to disseminate those great videos alongside other resources for your communities. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our expert and guest speaker today, who is Dr. Stephanie Ward, a geriatrician, that is a doctor specialising in the care of older people. And Stephanie works at Prince of Wales Hospital. She's a conjoint senior lecturer at the Randwick Clinical School of the University of New South Wales and the clinical registry lead at the Australian Dementia Network. In addition to doing all of those wonderful things, Stephanie is also the expert geriatrician featured on the TV series that some of you may have seen called Older People's Home for 4-year-olds, which I think was a beautiful piece of television. And if any of you haven't seen it, I encourage you to do so. And I think it's a show that beautifully aligns with some of the things that we're going to talk about, particularly around social connection and maintaining that social connection across generations. Before I hand over to Stephanie, I would like to encourage you all to think of some questions, because after Stephanie's presentation, we're going to have time for a Q&A, and we'd love to get your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them for you. So please, you'll see in Zoom that there is a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you'd like to ask a question, please do put your questions in that Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. After Stephanie's presentation, we'd love to try and answer some of your questions. Okay, so Stephanie, welcome. Thank you so much for joining, and I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marianne Gale, for the introduction, and I'm assuming you can see my slide. Please let me know if there's any issues with the audio or the slides as we progress. I'm really honoured to be speaking today in Multicultural Health Week. A really huge thanks to Jess, Lisa, Gia, Gaia and the team for inviting me to speak about something that I'm really passionate about, which is improving the health of older people, and also sharing a little bit of my journey as a geriatrician. So a geriatrician's actually a type of doctor, and I'm not sure if you're all aware, but we are the most satisfied of all medical practitioners. We have the highest level of life satisfaction. And I think that's because we take an explicitly holistic approach to the care of older people. So we're not just interested in the blood pressure or the pneumonia or the cellulitis. We're interested in that person's cognitive function. We're interested in that person's psychological well-being, in their physical function, and also in their social network and what matters to that person. And the other really lovely part of practicing geriatric medicine is that it's a team process. We work with a multidisciplinary team of experts, whether that be social workers, physiotherapists, speech pathologists, neuropsychologists, pharmacists, people in the inpatient setting, in the outpatient setting. And it's really lovely to work in a group, to work with people, to bounce ideas off each other, to find, but at the heart and at the center of everything we do is the person, and quite often their family as well. So we do have, as we know, an aging population, and just some statistics to put some context to this. About 4 million Australians, so 1 in 6 of us are aged 65 years and over, And that is an incredible measure of the success of our public health public health strategies, that we are now living longer than ever. And that's a wonderful thing. And of older Australians, we have a really richly diverse population. A third of older Australians are born outside of Australia. 18% of older Australians speak a language other than English at home. And about 6% of older Australians do not speak English very well at all. There's a lot of health conditions that can increase in their prevalence as we get older. And that's on top of some subtle age-related changes in physiological systems. And I know that I'm talking to a diverse crowd today, so a lot of what I'm going to talk about won't be news to you. But what we see as we get older can be changes in our hormonal system, in our endocrine system, increasing prevalence of things like diabetes, thyroid changes, and complications from these chronic conditions. Lung diseases, we know there's a change in our lung capacity as we get older. So people who've been living with diseases such as bronchitis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, tend to develop more severe symptoms as they get older. Cardiovascular disease, much better managed today than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago, but is still a major cause of disease burden for older people, particularly in 70s and 80s, where there can be issues with heart failure and hypertension. Musculoskeletal changes are what is often front and foremost for a lot of older people. Arthritis, a change in muscle bulk and strength, a change in balance. And that can have huge implications for mobility as we get older. Sensory changes are a really important one. Changes in our vision, cataracts, glaucoma, macular degeneration can affect our vision as we get older. And hearing changes are really common as well. And so these impact our ability to do things day to day, participate in conversations, in activities that we used to enjoy. And it's always really important to be mindful of these changes, to ask about them, to look for aids to help people correct them, like hearing aids, getting vision checked, and being aware of people's impairments in these areas to adapt how we approach. And changes to cognition are particularly common, particularly delirium in the inpatient setting and dementia at a community level. And the other syndrome I'm going to briefly mention is that of frailty and disability, the need to have assistance with day-to-day living. So there can be a lot of health conditions that can occur as we get older with increasing prevalence, and they often occur together. And they occur in a setting of changes in social structures as well as we get older, not working anymore perhaps, not being the caregiver of children or grandchildren anymore, changes in our community structure, and that can be particularly important for people who've migrated away from a community earlier in their life. And sometimes as well, these changes in our health and our social structure can combine to have some difficulties with having a sense of meaningful connection with other people, a sense of purpose, and that's actually a bidirectional relationship, in that we know that being lonely and socially isolated and lacking purpose in itself can exacerbate and worsen some of these chronic health conditions and outcomes. So they're the challenges that can come with aging. I'm going to briefly go over some of the syndromes that are at the heart of my clinical practice. So I work here at Prince of Wales in the acute hospital. So I look after acutely unwell patients. I work in the cognitive disorders clinic. I see people who are worried about dementia and delirium. I'm going to talk about where things are more complicated medically before I talk about the great preventative things that we can do. So dementia, I'm just going to mention because it's not only an interest area of mine, but something that is a big issue for a lot of Australians of all different backgrounds. It's a clinical syndrome defined by the presence of a change in cognitive function from baseline that's enough to be troublesome with your day-to-day life. It affects over 400,000 Australians, about 1 in 11 people aged over 65. But once you get older, into your mid-80s and above, it's more like 1 in 3 to almost 1 in 2 in your 90s. So while we say it's not a normal part of aging, It is something that's increasingly common as we get older. It is now the leading cause of death in women, the second leading cause of death overall, and the leading cause of disability in people aged 65 and above. And 70% of people who have dementia live in the community, and between a half to 3/4 of residents in aged care facilities are living with dementia. And you probably know many common causes are Alzheimer's disease, vascular pathology. A lot of dementia is actually not diagnosed, and it's common in hospitalised older people. And I'm often in the position of diagnosing dementia in a moment of crisis. And for those of us who work in a hospital, we'll know that people who are older, who have dementia, who come to hospital, they stay for longer. They have more complications. They're more likely to have falls. And there's often a lot of stress on caregivers as well. Some work I've been involved with suggests that people who do come from migrant or refugee backgrounds might be at risk of being diagnosed at a later point in the disease. Some people think that there's not much we can do about dementia, but that's actually not correct. There are lots of benefits to picking it up and to being diagnosed, and that includes getting access to treatments, post-diagnostic education and supports, future planning, getting support in for caregivers, and engaging in some of the healthy brain activities that I'll go over later in my talk. There are some medications that can help. Delirium is another really common condition that affects older people of all backgrounds hospitalised in our hospitals. It's quite frightening when it happens. It's an acute change in a cognitive function. It's associated with fluctuating attention, inattentiveness, altered conscious state. It's really distressing. It's distressing for family members. It can be distressing for nursing staff, for the team. There is a bidirectional relationship with dementia, meaning it does seem to increase your risk of getting dementia. And if you have dementia, you're more likely to get delirium. It affects about 200,000 Australians a year, but it can be prevented by good holistic care in a hospital, by sticking to our standards. For example, by reassuring people, by trying to reinstate regular routines, by getting people up, by having access to natural light, by using the hearing aids, the glasses, ensuring people are eating, treating the underlying causes, preventing constipation, addressing polypharmacy. We can actually reduce the incidence of dementia, of delirium, and shorten its duration. Falls are another really common condition that can occur as we get older. They affect 1 in 3 older people. They can cause not only major injuries, but at a certain point become have a very pernicious effect on our confidence. And I have people who've restricted their lives a lot because they're so fearful of having another fall. We take our balance for granted until it lets us down. And until you're in that situation, I think it's sometimes hard for people who are younger and fit to appreciate just how disabling it can be to be frightened of falling and not trusting your balance. But falls also can be prevented, particularly through exercise, through targeted balance and exercise program, and doing the things that our amazing advocates in that video were doing. Can prevent about 1 in 4, 1 in 5 falls a year just by doing those things, and also by addressing polypharmacy and ensuring that your other chronic health conditions are as best managed as possible, and environmental changes through the use of occupational therapy, good nutrition, etc. Frailty is another concept that many of us sort of intuitively understand, but nowadays is actually measured. And it's that concept of having a reduced physiological reserve that often does come with aging and often comes with the interplay of comorbidities, and also is influenced by how socially connected we are as well in our nutrition. And we know what a frail person looks like. Don't have much energy, don't do a lot. Being frail is a predictor of more adverse events, such as mortality, needing to go to a nursing home, having complications from surgery. Frailty is a much better predictor of adverse outcomes than age, or comorbidities or disability alone. And what makes people frail? Well, it's a little bit of just normal aging, but it's also the interplay of all comorbidities, but also things that we can change. Being physically active, not being socially connected or having support, having too many medications, having not great nutrition. So sometimes we can't change everything that happens with aging, but there's a lot of stuff we can do. as health workers as well, so we can optimize comorbidities. We can encourage things like not smoking, minimizing alcohol, having lifelong good nutrition and exercise habits, making sure that we're reaching out to people in our community who are lonely and providing social supports and looking for opportunities to get people in, getting people more physically active at an appropriate level, managing poor mental health, reducing polypharmacy. I love working with pharmacists who help me with this all the time. They always come up with ideas I haven't thought of. So there's a lot of great things that we can still do to get people at a better quality of life and in getting more life into their years as they get older. That was mentioned at Multicultural Health Week launch early this week. It's a great way to explain what healthy aging is about. So some really important considerations that I have for working with people from diverse backgrounds, and that is that at the heart of good clinical practice, it's always having person-centered care. So knowing your patient, their family, and what matters to them, what makes life worth living, what's acceptable, what isn't. At Prince of Wales on our wards, we use what's called the sunflower tool, which is a way for us to put up on the wall things about this patient. What do they like? What don't they like? What matters to them? What food do they like? What music do they like? What was their job? So that people coming in, particularly for people who might be confused, we have a sense of who this person is, and then we can give it a more person-centered care. It's so important that we use interpreters as much as we can, particularly when I'm meeting people for the first time, and particularly as a hospitalist working with people who are often unwell and delirious. Having at least trying to overcome a language barrier to communicate with people is really, really important. And I think, as we know, it's really important to ask people and never make assumptions about what might be important to them based on any of their demographic background. We should never assume. We should get to know our patients. So how can we age well? So I'm going to end on a positive note, because we can't change everything as we get older, but we can make differences. And a lot of the stuff I'm going to go over, you already know. A lot of it's iterative of what our health advocates are telling us, but I'm going to say it one more time. So that is, and just remember, this is advice for you, for your family, for your patients, for your community. It is never too early to start, and it's never too late to start, okay? So exercise, we all know the benefits of exercise, but I want you to be aware that when we talk about exercise, we're talking about doing something to get your heart rate up a bit. It's a little bit of cardiovascular work, but also doing exercise to get your muscles moving. Now, that can be as simple as getting people to stand up from a seated chair, if they can do that. Squats, lunges, go to the gym, do some weights if you're up to that, but you do want to move your muscles. So I often tell my patients, if they're able to, and I often look after a much older group, can you stand up from a chair? Can you practice doing that? Is that uncomfortable for you? Because that's a great way of getting your big muscles working. Some of my patients have little dumbbells, 1 kilogram or 2 kilogram. Have that near your kettle when you're boiling a cup of tea. Lift it up and down. Everyone knows that exercise is important, but a lot of us actually don't put it into practice. And what helps us put it into practice are just some little tips. Doing stuff that's fun, that's always good. Doing stuff with other people, that's even better. A lot of people find that if they're monitoring how active they are, like using one of those things like a Fitbit or a Garmin or any of those actigraphy, is a really great way, because then you monitor what you're doing. You're like, oh, I need to be more active. Oh, I didn't get up my step count today. And it is that positive feedback cycle. And I've found a lot of people's behavior changes just by using that. Routine is really good, scheduling in something and sticking to it, because we're all busy. The patients are busy, their family members are busy. You've got to make it explicit that this is a priority. And incidental exercise, where it's possible, walk a bit further, take the stairs, provided that your body allows you to do that. We're all different. We've got to fit what works for us. Having a good diet, which one of our advocates spoke about as well, is really important. We want enough protein, particularly as we get older. We need more protein in our diet. For people who are not vegans, having 2 eggs a day can be a really good way of supplementing your protein. We also want a diet that's very low in those ultra-processed foods, higher in whole grains and vegetables, and omega-3 rich foods as well. Keeping your brain active at any age is a great way to help prevent things like cognitive decline and dementia. So picking up new activities, learn a new instrument, do a crossword, keep connecting with other people is so important. How connected you are at the age of 50 is actually the biggest predictor of how long you will live. Not your blood pressure, not your cholesterol. It's the quality of the relationships you have in your middle life and above. Keeping connected can help prevent dementia. It can also be protective against low mood, depression. So it's easy for us to say to people to be connected, but I think our role as health workers is to help people to become connected and to help people who are isolated to get those opportunities. Because it's really easy if you're always that social person to do it, but some people need help. Checking in with your primary care physician is really important, especially around blood pressure control, high cholesterol, diabetes, and getting rid of medications you don't need. All of these things might prevent dementia. We think we can prevent about 40 to 45% of cases of dementia just by managing a lot of these things that I've mentioned. We also, it's not on my slides, but we're also promoting the importance of cancer prevention and getting your routine cancer checks as recommended as another part of healthy aging. Avoid smoking, avoid excessive alcohol. I also tell people as they get older, don't climb ladders. Wear a helmet when you go riding on your bike, protect your head against head injuries. Get your eyesight checked. Make sure people are getting their eyesight checked. Check your hearing. If there's hearing impairment, put hearing aids in. Having hearing impairment might increase your risk of dementia as you get older. Having hearing aids in helps you be connected, be engaged in activities. And look after your mental well-being as well. Look after your stress. Look at things like mindfulness. Seek out psychological help if people are low in their mood. And I also give advice about sleep, just basic stuff, but having a good night's sleep is really good for our mental health, for our physical health, and for our cognitive health as well. I'm going to have two more slides, but just to mention a bit of a plug for an area of interest of mine, which is intergenerational practice, the purposeful bringing together of two unrelated generations for the benefit of both. And as Dr. Gale mentioned, I was involved in the ABC series Old People's Home for 4-year-olds. And we also did the same thing with teenagers. And what we found by bringing together older people with younger people, that both generations really experienced significant benefits. Specifically for the older people, we saw that people who were participating in this program, by the end, were walking faster, were physically stronger when we measured with a dynamometer, had better balance, had better mood, had a better quality of life, and had lower objective measures of frailty. And what I really loved about being part of this program, probably more than anything, was the reminder that older people can experience joy and have things to look forward to, and that life can get better. Even if you're 85, 90, 95, 96, we had people up to that age and who were very frail, who found that life got a lot better just from participating, and the benefits went to the younger generation as well. So that brings my talk to a close, and it'll be time for Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I really enjoyed that, and I'm sure others on the line got a lot of information and a lot of ideas from that. So thank you so much. Just a reminder to our audience to please pop your questions in the Q&A. We'd be very happy to try and take any questions that you might have for Dr. Ward. But while you're thinking about your questions and putting them in, I've got a few for you, Stephanie. So one is firstly about carers. And we know that for older people, carers can play a really important role. Do you have any suggestions for our health staff on the line about how we should engage carers in the care of older people? I think sometimes we don't always do it as well as what we could. Do you have some thoughts about that, Stephanie?
I'm really glad you asked that question, because I do have some strong thoughts about it. Acknowledging the caregiver and involving the caregiver is absolutely critical. And for a lot of older people, particularly, for example, if they've got physical issues, meaning a caregiver is doing a lot of physical care or cognitive care, that caregiving role, it can be unrelenting. And particularly for people who are caring for older people with, say, dementia or cognitive changes, who might be up at night, who might be exhibiting changes in behaviour. And some of that changes in behaviour can be very unpleasant. And you might have an older caregiver, or it could be a daughter, or it could be a son. But that whole experience can be so isolating, so exhausting, unrelenting, this constant cognitive overload, as well as a physical aspect. So what I think is so critically important is that we acknowledge what a caregiver is doing. And I've found that just by saying to an older person, a caregiver, sounds like things have been really stressful and you are doing an incredible job, and just reflecting back to them what they're doing. Wow, that sounds exhausting. You must be exhausted. It's unrelenting. That's a huge cognitive load. It helps people feel acknowledged and validated. And for some people, it's really terrible, but for some people, that's the only positive feedback they're going to get. And it can mean a lot when it comes from a caregiver, from a healthcare professional. It can mean a lot. So I teach my registrars when they are seeing patients in our clinic who are caregivers. I say, you tell that caregiver that they're doing an incredible job. You tell them that. Like, oh, I should have done that. That would have meant a lot to my mum when my mum was caring for her mum, you know. It's just basic things. And then ask them how they're going and make sure they're looking after their health. And make sure that we point out support. So if we don't know where the supports are, get them in touch with somebody who does. For example, Carer Gateway. Some of us who work in the aged care system know that the system can let us down a little bit. There's a huge wait to get my aged care assessments. But where we can help, let's step up and help. And I often try and take the load off people as well. Instead of saying to someone, here's a website, you refer yourself. If I can see someone's overwhelmed, I'm just going to do it for them, because I know it's just one less thing for them to do. So I'm sure you've all got great ideas about how to support caregivers, but I just find acknowledgement and validation is one of the really, really important things that we can do.
Thanks, Stephanie. I think that's really helpful advice. And I think, you know, the role of the caregiver is sometimes underestimated or overlooked. And also our system can be challenging to navigate, myself navigating that for my own mum, as an educated person working in health, I still found it hard. And so it's not easy. One of the things in some called communities, and we have a question somewhat related to that, is that sometimes starting the conversation about caring and the support needs of the carer can be tricky or viewed as disrespectful. I know in my own family, sometimes there's a cultural perception that the family has to do everything, and you've got to manage everything, and that can just be exceptionally difficult. Do you have any thoughts about how to broach sometimes discussions when you can see that a family needs help, and how to have that conversation?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. And I do see this, particularly in certain people who believe they have a cultural expectation that it is my responsibility and I'm going to care for mum at home and I have to do this and I have to do this on my own. And it's an iterative process. It's supportive. It's around acknowledging that, you are doing what you can, but there's not 10 of you. It's around, specifying your mum actually needs 3 or 4 people over a shift to help you care, or this can't go on. Or sometimes being a little bit more, well, you can tell the family that you've been directed by the specialist team that this is required. It's because I was saying, of course you want to, and you have done more than most people could do. But you can't do any more because you're one person. You're not a superhuman. There's not 10 of you. And so it's iterative. And it's also, I think what a lot of us do is building relationships and building trust and supporting people who might need to say to a family member, I can't look after mum or dad at home anymore. It's not always an easy fix, right? And sometimes it does get to a crisis point. But I find that relationship building and iterative conversations can help, but it's tricky. And it's tricky with older people who don't want to accept help, but it's a really common one as well. And often we talk about, look, we've got to pick the main battles here, and we're going to have to let things slide in different areas as well. Things aren't going to be perfect now. Life's a bit trickier. Yes, they're not. I talked a lot about healthy strategies today, but that's sometimes not going to work for someone who's frail and has cognitive impairment and is apathetic. So we might say, look, I know you think they're bored and they're not doing anything, but we can't get them to do anything. We might just need to be at peace with that. At least, let's perhaps focus on things that we can change. So it's just a bit about being practical and prioritizing what's really important and reframing expectations. We can have such great quality of life as we get older, but at a certain point, aging can really start to throw up some challenges. And what I often tell my patients, because I'm looking after sicker people in hospital, I say to them, getting old is not for the faint-hearted. I'm like, yes, they feel recognized by that. Because it's bloody hard when you're putting it down.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very true, Stephanie. But I think as well, for many of our CALD communities, it's also important, I think, and for our health workers on the line and those who work with CALD communities to know that there are a lot of supports out there. Our system is not perfect, but there are places to go to for support, and families are not alone. And sometimes, older people at different stages, different challenges are thrown up, but there's always opportunities to help people live the best life they can with the constraints they have in that moment, and that families don't have to do it alone, and an older person doesn't have to do it alone. And there are lots of supports out there to help people, no matter what stage they're at and no matter what their physical or cognitive challenges may be, that there's always opportunities to enjoy life and support people to be to get the most out of whatever they can at a point in their life.
Yeah, well said. I was going to say just quickly, I think what I say to people is, you are not alone with this. We're here with you. You're not going to go through this alone. We're going to be here to help you with all of this. And I just find saying, where we don't have all the answers, but we're here with you and we're on your side and we're going to work with you. It's often the way to get through things.
Yeah, and I think that's a fabulous message. And, coming back to our community ambassadors and their wonderful example of showing, what kind of things you can do at different stages. And I think it's wonderful for older people to do as much as they can for as long as they can, and then be open and know that there are supports available when they need assistance. And all of us at some point in our life are going to need help with various things.
Yep.
All right. So on that note, Stephanie, we might just wrap up today's session. We're coming close to 12 o'clock. So I just want to say a very big thank you to you for that wonderful presentation today, and in general for being such a passionate advocate for older people in our community. So thank you very much, Dr. Stephanie Ward. I'm going to now just wrap up our session. And the team are going to pop up a QR code. Actually, before they do that, we actually have a little video to showcase something that Dr. Ward has filmed, especially for Multicultural Health Week. So before we do that, we're going to show you a little video.
The healthier we are as we get older, the more we can continue to enjoy life. This Multicultural Health Week, we are celebrating and supporting older people from multicultural communities to live healthy, active, and socially connected lives. Small changes can make a big difference to your health and well-being. Try these 4 simple things. Move daily, go for a walk, or join a local physical activity group. Eat a healthy, balanced diet and drink plenty of water. Visit your GP regularly for health checks. And stay socially connected. Spend time with family, friends, and people in your community. These simple changes can help prevent and manage chronic health conditions that often come with age. If an older person you know needs extra support, a geriatrician can help. Geriatricians are medical specialists who understand the health needs of older people. They diagnose, manage, and support a wide range of age-related conditions. For more information and advice, speak to your GP or visit the New South Wales Health website. Together, we can support healthy ageing for everyone in our community.
So healthy,
Wonderful. I think that's a great video and encourage you all to share that broadly. As I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of resources available this Multicultural Health Week for all of you to use and share widely with your networks. There will be a QR code, I think, that the team will pop up. Please feel free to scan that. That will take you directly to where you can find more resources. There are resources there in over 40 languages, including videos, posters, social media tiles, fact sheets, and there are some resources that have been 18 resources translated into 5 community languages as well on the New South Wales Health website. So finally, as we finish up, I perhaps will ask you just to call to mind again that older person who might be a parent, it might be a client of yours, it might be a patient. Again, to think about, what you might have taken away from today's session that you can use to enhance their lives and enhance the lives of other older people that you might come across in the course of your work with New South Wales Health or in your own family and community. So I'm Dr. Marianne Gale. Thank you again, everybody, for joining this morning, and I wish you all a very happy Multicultural Health Week. Thank you and goodbye.